Hi there. Welcome to the very first episode of the Productive AI podcast. I'm your host, Troy Angradon. The goal of this podcast is to simplify artificial intelligence and machine learning so that you can understand what it is and what it isn't, and where you can apply it to get value for your organization. So a little bit about my background. I've spent the last 25 years working in the IT and computing space. The last 12 of that was really heavily focused on the cloud computing market. And the last 4 years of that was spent selling software as a service based hybrid cloud security products as well as machine learning based network analytic products. I've worked with the world's largest telcos, the big 5 US based web companies, global 100 enterprise customers, and state and local governments. I've built my own companies, and I've also worked on 5 different startups, all of which were acquired by larger companies. And I've also worked in a startup team inside a larger company. So I have a pretty broad perspective on what it takes to build new products in emerging markets. After spending all of this time in the cloud computing space, it has become clear to me that the next phase of IT is really around artificial intelligence and machine learning. In the same way that cloud computing really drove a transformation in IT and a refactoring of pretty much everything, all the applications, all the stacks, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to do the same thing. I really think that all the work that we've done in the last 10 to 15 years with big data and cloud computing and analytics and data science has really laid the foundation for this next phase of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, for those of you who don't know, AI is not that new. It has been around for about 60 years, and it's even gone through a few up and down cycles already. There were even periods called AI winters where funding and interest dried up pretty much for 10 years at a time. But this current phase that we're in, call it the third season, seems like it's going to stick around for a while. It seems like AI and machine learning, based on some developments in the last 10 to 12 years around deep learning, which is based on deep neural networks, which we'll get into in the podcast, has really opened up a lot of possibility and started to solve problems that were never solvable before. So it feels like this time is different. And what's interesting to me as somebody who's been through the entire cloud computing wave is that it feels like AI is today where cloud computing was 10 or 12 years ago, just like when Amazon was launching Amazon Web Services and all they had was S3 and a command line interface. And nobody really took it seriously, and it seemed very strange and new, and of course we all know how that played out. So what you see right now in the AI market is a few early adopters that are deriving huge value, creating massive business advantage by deploying AI and machine learning, and they've been doing it for many years. Amazon is a great one that I just mentioned. And then you see everybody else, and they're sort of coming along slowly. Some of them have done proof of concepts in the last 3 to 4 years, maybe some larger pilot projects. And some of those early folks are now getting to the stage where they're saying, okay, this is great. We have some capability and some competency here. We've proven it on a couple of projects. How do we get to scale? And that's kind of the phase that we're in. But while they're doing that, the rest of the market is just now saying, maybe we should start looking at this. Maybe we should start analyzing whether this is something that our organization can do or should be doing. And what you see in these early markets, like we saw in cloud, is a lot of confusion in the market, a lot of debate around definitions and terminology and semantics. And you also see this huge Cambrian explosion of startups that are all launching new products, and it gets very noisy and very confusing very quickly. And to make matters even worse, you find companies that maybe weren't AI companies now rebranding themselves as AI companies. And we saw the same thing happen with cloud, where traditional hosting companies would rebrand as cloud hosting companies, which they clearly weren't. And so we'll definitely be talking about that and kind of trying to help bring some clarity to that in this channel. Over the course of the future episodes, we're going to be having 4 different but related conversations with 4 different groups of people. The first will be the builders. The second will be the buyers and the buying teams. The third will be the actual implementation teams. And the fourth will be the analysts who are covering this space. So let me start with the builders. These are really product teams, and this could be anything from a startup building their first and only product in the space, or it could be a more established company that has set aside a team to build a new AI-specific feature or function or product to sell to their existing customers. It could also include some of the platform vendors, and this would be like Microsoft or Amazon or Google with their AI and machine learning-based services and platform technologies. The fourth would be AI services companies. This could be anything from a big four consulting firm with an AI practice area, or at the other end of the spectrum, it could be a hyper-specialized boutique consulting firm that's really focused only on artificial intelligence and machine learning. The second group that we'll be talking to will be the buyers and the buying teams. And this is really the business and the technical leaders. These are the people trying to bring AI into their organization to disrupt and transform, or maybe to create new competitive advantage in whatever field that they're working on. For them, the conversation is going to be focused more on the ecosystem and how it's developing, who's doing what, how to fit the pieces together. How do you get from strategy to execution? How do you map your business goals into these various AI and machine learning technologies, tools, and processes? So that's going to be really the conversation we're going to be having with the business and the technical leaders, or the buyers and the buying teams in group number 2. The third group that we're going to be working with will really be the project implementation teams. These are the people that are in the trenches every day making these projects work and skinning their knees on these early tools and technologies, and really wrestling with how to take these things out of the lab and get them into the real world, into an actual solution that can scale for the business. So for those people, we're really going to be focusing on things like, what were their business goals? What were they trying to achieve in the first place? How did they think they would achieve that, using which tools and technologies and platforms? And then ultimately, what did they end up doing? And what worked and what didn't? So we really want to sort of do some analysis with them and have them share some of their lessons learned, so that other teams that are thinking about executing those projects that are coming behind them can hopefully learn from those lessons and maybe accelerate their own projects. The fourth group that we'll be talking to will be the industry analysts. These are the people who are working really hard day in and day out, and they're doing a lot of writing and podcasting and blogging, and they're helping their customers make sense of the market and how this ecosystem is developing. And sometimes it really helps to step back and take that 100,000-foot view of the entire industry and what the components are of that industry and how it breaks up. So we'll be having those kinds of conversations, and the goal of those conversations will really be to give that macro view on the industry, so that buyers or builders or implementation teams, the first three groups we talked about, so that they have a clearer idea of where we are in this market at this time, and how things are emerging and developing, and what's coming next, and which building blocks are getting put in place this year versus next year. And those are all really critical things to know with any emerging technology market. So that brings us to the end of the introductory episode of the Productive AI podcast. The goal of this podcast will be to simplify artificial intelligence and machine learning to help you better understand what it is and what it isn't, what it can do today and what it will be able to do tomorrow, and where you can use it to bring value into your organization. And we'll be doing that through these 4 sets of related conversations with the builders, the buyers, the doers, as well as the analysts covering the space. For more information and for show notes and links to all of the podcast episodes, you can find us at productiveai.com. Hope to see you on the next episode.